Hey Parker, it's Wednesday, January the 7th, and it snowed. Basically 2 to 3 inches covered the entire DC metro area. I'm unable to get to the library to get The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy until Friday at the earliest. I did read the 2 short stories you mentioned, The Last Question by Isaac Asimov and The Way of the Cross and Dragon by George R.R. Martin. I'm pretty familiar with George R.R. Martin at this point. But I hadn't read anything by George R.R. Martin besides like the first 2 books in the Game of Thrones series, and kind of obsessing over the show more than I should probably. I really enjoyed The Last Question. It very heavily reminded me of back in like English class in high school and middle school, where they would assign readings and it would be like the most confusing, existential, terror-inducing short stories that you would ever read in your life. I enjoy the weird things. The collection of books in my paranormal section alone attests to that. But I do have to admit, I believe I like The Way of the Cross and Dragon better. If not solely because dragons. Actually, the very first book series that got me into reading was dragon-based. But also because of the fact I was raised Catholic, and I very much enjoy seeing how different people interpret it and how it's evolved, like even to the point where I really keep up with what the Pope says because I like the direction the Church is going in, and I would like it to continue going in a more liberal direction. In return, I'd like to recommend a book to you. This book will probably not be able to be found in stores because, first off, the author is not really an author, and it is his first book, and it's not a very popular book. But as a fan of his other endeavors and works and such, the moment I found out this book existed, I needed to get it. I'm hoping this is in frame, gray by Pete Wentz and James Montgomery, with a lovely picture of Faye on the back. Basically, if you're a fan of any of Fall Out Boy's lyrics, this is the book to read, because Pete, as the main lyricist for the band, it shows in the book. The book is basically a chronicle detailing a young rock star on his quest to become famous and his relationship with his girlfriend, whose name we never find out. She's referred only to as her. Speculation states that this is basically Pete Wentz's story, but while it has a lot of similarities to it, as far as I can tell, probably not exactly his story. It might draw heavily on his experiences, but I've never met an author who didn't put a lot of what they went through into their works. Basically, the writing style is incredible. I can't think of another author who's writing, just like snippets of pages or paragraphs or sentences. I've never found another style that I enjoyed quite as much as Pete Wentz's. A lot of what people complain about with the book is that it didn't have a point. I won't spoil anything in case you do decide to read it, but, you know, stuff doesn't always need to have a point. Our lives don't. It's kind of a lie that we need a point. And I'm going to read a few of the quotes of the book just to give you an example. Freud suggests that in order to love someone else, one must love themselves. It's a classic needs before other needs argument. Unfortunately, no one really loves themselves. And if they do, they need to get to know themselves better. Unfortunately, no one is really happy. There she is, lying in front of me, smoking a cigarette, thinking of something or someone else. And that's how she is stuck in my mind forever. We are 2 explorers in the dark, mapless and hopeless, alone together. If you're at all familiar with Fall Out Boy's discography, one of their most recent hit songs was Alone Together, which is amazing. I think it's so cute how you little punk boys act like you hate girls, she jokes, lighting another cigarette. It's like we're your enemies or something. I tell her to replace girls with everyone and she'd be on to something. In the end, Wentz has a way of describing exactly what he's feeling without saying how he's feeling it. In the end, I think my singular favorite quote from the novel is, "Love exists in powder, love exists in pills, we are all addicts." This might be the wannabe hipster in me, but it's really a surprisingly good book for however cliche and hipster you want to call it. I'll link the Goodreads to it in the description if you do in fact want to check it out. I'll see you tomorrow, Parker, and DFTBA.